Hi there, I'm Justin Leone, founder of the world's best wine bar, Sticks and Stones in Munich, and the Sommbox. I wanted to personally thank you for your support and interest in one of the most innovative ways to drink wine, especially with a box that's very near and dear to my heart. Now, if you know me, or you've read my book, Just Wine, Mein Wissen, Only Bullshit, you probably know that it's the Languedoc, this very same region, that set me on my path to wine. It was a very humble little bottle of Le Mas from Pierre Clavel, which blew my mind initially. And as I did a little more digging, I stumbled upon a wine which would then really change my life, and that is the Mas de Daumas Gassac. Back then, I was just starting. I couldn't really afford, these big fancy Bordeaux that I would always hear about. But then I stumbled upon this wine that was being referred to as the Lafite of the Languedoc. And I said, well, okay, there's my entry. Now, the story is every bit as fascinating as the wine itself. It all starts back in the 70s with a gentleman named Aimé Guibert, the heir to a wealthy French family who produced high-end leather products. And he discovered this little farmhouse in the south of France, in the Languedoc, in the l'Hérault, just as a vacation house. So he bought it, started renovating. Then comes the housewarming party, invited some friends. One of them happened to be a geologist. He took a leisurely walk around the estate, but when he came back, he was completely in a fluster. He said, Aimé, what are you doing? And he said, well, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm relaxing. I said, no, you need to make wine. And he said, whoa, I didn't come down here to do more work. I came down here to chill out. And he said, no, you don't understand. On your property, you have every single form of geological event and epoch and time period in all of France in one place. You have to do this. Then Aimé was intrigued. He said, okay, well, I'll call the best winemaker and we'll get going. He called Émile Pénaud at the University of Bordeaux, maybe the most famous enologist at the time. And he was met with a very chilly response because, of course, the aristocratic Bordelaise thinking, Languedoc? I don't think so, peasant. I have better things here on the right side of the tracks to do. So Aimé was not shaken by this. He decided to call Émile every day for the next 2 years until Émile was so frustrated. He said, listen, I don't know who you are, but if it'll shut you up, I will come down there, take a look at this horrible property, tell you should never make wine, and then we'll all be on with our lives. Well, the minute Émile stepped on this property, the rest is history. He was just as blown away as the geologist was originally, and he said, we're starting immediately. And thus, Mas de Daumas Gassac, and one of my favorite wines in the world, is born. What makes this wine so incredible and such a hidden treasure, actually, because Languedoc, you have to imagine, in the 80s, basically when Aimé started, his first vintage was 1978. The Languedoc was actually called the wine lake because it was the center of massive industrial production, just making barely quaffable plonk in boxes or bags for the masses, and no one took it seriously. But no one invested as much time in it as Aimé did. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was intuition, but Aimé took to winemaking like a fish to water. Now, because of this incredible geology, he invested so much time with Émile in analyzing each and every single plot for the specific geology and microclimate. Then, when they had an idea of what grapes would probably work well in this originally over 38 plots, and I think meanwhile in the modern vintages they've even identified over 60 individual plots or vineyards. He then, being Aimé Guibert, went to every producer in France or abroad who he knew to produce the best example of that grape or that wine. For example, for his Cabernet, who else? My favorite Bordeaux in the world, Haut-Brion. He went to Haut-Brion and said, hey, I need some vines. No clones, I'm not gonna go to a nursery, I'm going to go to the source and get clippings from the best wines that produced his favorite bottles. So, Pre-Phylloxera Cabernet from Haut-Brion, Mourvèdre, of course, Domaine Tempier, for Syrah, none other than Jean-Louis Chave. And for his whites, the best producers in Condrieu, for Viognier, of course, Charles Hour, down in Provence for his Petit Manseng, Col Lafon for his Chardonnay. The list goes on and on. It's just a greatest hits list of the greatest winemakers you could find on any wine list. And he started planting these vineyards individually, picking them individually. Sometimes the harvest takes a month in this case to get all the grapes in because of all the grapes that ripen at different times. He even had a friend who was a paleontologist doing digs, archaeological digs in the Middle East. And he came back with a wet towel one day to visit and said, I think you might want this. I heard you've been looking for it. And it's a vine that Aimé knew from the Bible called Neheliskal. And he heard about it in the book Or they talk about the land of milk and honey in the Canaan Valley, where grapes, it was so abundant and the grapes were so insane that it took 2 people to carry these bunches of grapes. Of course, people were a little smaller back then. But anyway, and so he grafted and planted these Neherlascal vines, and lo and behold, out of the 20, a handful of them actually survived. And the grapes are these massive cascading bunches. I mean, how insane do you have to be? And this actually ends up going into the sweet wine that he produced. So, I mean, in terms of a history and a geology and a winemaking, I don't think there are very many more interesting wines and underrated wines than Master Daumas Gassac. In this box, I've tried to give you an amazing oversight into the sort of new generation. The son took over, which makes actually the 16 vintage in your box very special, because this is the year that Aimé Guibert passed away, and the son 100% took over. But there's been a shift. The old vintages tend to be pretty rustic. I mean, I'm such a fanatic. I've collected and drunk and worked with every single vintage of Gassac since its first in 1978, except for the 1978. If anyone has one, let me know. Anyway, the old vintages tend to be rough and rustic, like Aimé himself. If you ever watch the documentary Mondo Vino, it starts with Aimé saying, "Le vin est mort." Wine is dead. Pretty pessimistic view of the world, but anyway, that describes Aimé. His wines were coarse, rustic, but also majestic, and took a lot of time to develop. I will say that the 82, last time I drank out of a Jeroboam, could be put in a lineup with any great Bordeaux you could imagine, especially from the left bank. So, as you'll see, and I would recommend going to the website, because it's the Master Daumas Gassac website is fantastic. They give you an entire breakdown of every single vintage, the technical sheets, the vintage climate notes, the picking, everything. So I won't bore you with all the details, but here I try to give you an incredible overview of what makes Gassac so magical. And of course, from 6 liters, 3 liters, and magnums, from white to red. A bombastic 2022 white, followed by a rich and decadent 2018 white, to show you what a little bit of age does with these wines, making them even more creamy and nutty and waxy and honeyed and just absolutely incredible. The kind of wine that you can serve with canapes, because it can handle rillette to foie gras, to fruit things, to anything that you want. I mean, and play with the temperatures. Temperature is incredible with these white wines. The warmer you serve it, and if they're aged, you can serve them like you would serve a red wine, to be perfectly honest, and it loses nothing. These are low acid, Viognier, Chardonnay based wines with Chenin Blanc and with Petit Mansang. The Chenin Blanc, of course, gives you that edgy sort of snap. The Petit Mansang, a brilliant acidity and incredible floral aspect, which you normally get from the wines of Gascony. And then, of course, the Chardonnay for the structure and the power, and then the Viognier to kind of just be like the glue between the cracks, to kind of bring it all together, to flesh it out and give it this exotic, almost like pina colada kind of character. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other really crazy grapes mixed in there as well. For the reds, it's kind of the same deal. Cabernet is what Aimé chose to be the star of the show, although originally he was given the option to make it a Pinot Noir based wine, because they could have grown just as much Pinot as Cab, but being a Bordeaux lover, he wanted to go in that direction. Of course, the Pinot vines do come from none other than Romani Conti. So normally there is about around 6% of Pinot in those, along with Tannat from the south to give that ripping tannin. Cabernet as the absolute structure, some Merlot, some Cabernet Franc, typical Bordeaux stuff, some Syrah in the mix, some Grenache, some Mourvedre, even crazy stuff that you would only find, random grapes like from Georgia and from Corsica, even some Montepulciano from Abruzzo to give it some darkness and some lift. It's wild. And we're walking you through 20 down to 14. 20, an epic vintage. Now keep in mind, when you're tasting from the 6 liter, it's going to have even more power and structure, but it's also going to have more depth and voluptuousness. So you actually get both sides. The 20 is going to be epic. Taste it now, but buy some and lay it down. I mean, there isn't a better wine I can think of which you can afford to buy a case of and forget for the next 10 years. In Bordeaux, it's not so easy. Here, it's fine. 18, it's so decadent and wonderful and inviting and rich, and it just kind of wraps you up like a blanket. The 16, classic. 16 and 15 were 2 of the probably best vintages in recent history for Gassac, but 16 with even more finesse and focus, in my opinion, than 15 with its little bit more raw power. And then 14, showing you not only the development of the wine now at 11, 12 years out, but the finesse and the elegance and the clarity that this terroir can provide. Anyway, I couldn't be more excited to share one of my favorite wines on the planet with you. I hope you have so much fun with this. I also hope you come back for more, because there's so many things that I want to show everybody, and this is just the beginning. Anyway, from the Languedoc to you, thank you so much for supporting Sommbox. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Welcome to the family, and we'll see you the next box.